A hangar in central Texas. Dust on the spinner, flat tires on the mains. A logbook that stops mid-sentence 3 years ago. This airplane was somebody's dream. It is now a $90,000 lesson in what the seller did not say, the broker did not check, and the FAA did not require anyone to disclose. 10 airplanes sit on this list. Every one of them has a loyal owner who swears by it. Every one of them has a former owner who swears at it. The difference between those two people is not the airplane. It is the bill they did not see coming. We are counting down from annoying to catastrophic. The bottom of this list costs you a weekend and a phone call. The top costs you the airplane. Have you owned any of these and lived to tell the story? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe to Sky Ranch for the maintenance truth. The brochure leaves out. Number 10. The Grumman AA-1 Yankee. Start with what pulls you in. A sliding canopy like a fighter jet, a bonded aluminum airframe with no rivets, a cruise speed of 117 knots on 108 horsepower. The Yankee is the cheapest, coolest looking two-seater you can buy. Under $30,000 gets you in the door. The catch sits at the bottom of the speed range. The Yankee stalls at 60 knots clean. That is 8 knots faster than a Cessna 152. When the Yankee stalls, it does not mush forward like a Skyhawk. It drops. The original wing builds drag so fast at high angles of attack that the airplane falls behind the power curve before most students recognize the problem. The sink rate at slow speeds is severe enough that instructors in the 1970s refused to use them at high-altitude airports. Through 1973, the Yankee had a spin fatality rate 5 times higher than any airplane in production. The factory prototype was lost in a spin test. NASA later conducted controlled spin tests on the type. Many of those spins were not recoverable. The Federal Aviation Administration launched a special investigation and found a safety problem serious enough to issue an airworthiness directive prohibiting spins in every AA-1 ever built. American Aviation's own chief engineer wrote in a 1971 SAE paper that the flight characteristics of the original airplane were, in general, quite bad. The later models fixed the wing. The reputation never recovered. Budget entry. Real consequences. Number 9. The Cessna. Cardinal 177, early production. Cessna built the Cardinal to replace the 172. Wide cabin, no wing struts, modern lines. On paper, the airplane that would retire the Skyhawk. The 1968 and 1969 models launched with a stabilator that ran out of authority at low speeds. Pilots reported mushing on approach, poor go-around performance, and a general reluctance to do what the 172 did without complaint. A 172 pilot transitioning to the early Cardinal expected a better airplane and got a more demanding one. Cessna re-engineered the wing for 1970 with a leading-edge cuff and fixed the problem. A 1971 Cardinal flies like a completely different airplane. The damage was already done. The early reputation dragged down the entire Cardinal line for decades. Insurance rates on Cardinals still run higher than 172s, despite the aerodynamic fix being 55 years old. Parts commonality with the 172 is lower than most buyers expect, and the Cardinal-specific components come from a smaller supply chain. A good Cardinal, 1970 or later, is a genuinely good airplane with one of the widest cabins in the 4-seat class. An early Cardinal is a cautionary tale about buying a first-year model from any manufacturer. Number 8. The Piper Comanche. The PA-24 is the airplane every cross-country pilot dreams about. 180 knots, 90-gallon fuel capacity, a real IFR platform that eats distance. The problem is not the airplane. The problem is the calendar. Flooding destroyed Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, the factory that built every Comanche in 1972. Piper never rebuilt it. The tooling is gone. Comanche-specific parts stopped being manufactured decades ago. The supply chain now runs on salvage yards, owner groups trading used components, and a shrinking pool of wrecked airframes being parted out across the country. When someone strips the last salvaged Comanche, the parts stop. Then there is the wing spar. Airworthiness Directive 2006-18-15 requires repetitive eddy current inspections of the main wing spar lower cap. When cracks are found, spar replacement runs $30,000 to $50,000 per wing. The fleet shrinks every year as spars age out and owners decide the airplane is not worth the compliance cost. Fast airplane. Shrinking lifeline. Number 7. The Mooney M20. The fastest piston single ever built. The M20 TN Acclaim cruises at 237 knots. No other production piston airplane touches it. Mooney owners are the most devoted tribe in general aviation. The manufacturer has gone through at least 12 bankruptcies or ownership changes. That is not a typo. 12. Production stopped in 2020. A Chinese real estate developer named the Meijing Group bought it in 2013, poured millions into a composite trainer prototype, cancelled the project, and walked away. The current management group is an entertainment attorney trying to keep the parts pipeline open for roughly 7,000 remaining airframes. Owner forums carry a blunt summary. It is questionable if the Mooney factory will keep making parts after its latest bankruptcy. When the parts stop, the airplane stops. Every Mooney owner knows this. Most of them fly anyway. That is either loyalty or denial. The market has not decided yet. The warm-up is over. From here, the bills get heavier, the airworthiness directives get longer, and the gap between what you expected and what you got starts to widen. Number 6. The Cessna 210 Centurion. 6 seats, retractable gear. 165 to 185 knots depending on the model. Up to 1,600 pounds of useful load. The 210 does what almost no other single-engine piston airplane does. It carries a real load at a real speed over a real distance. The gear system is the problem. The Cessna 210 accounts for 20% of all gear-up landings in general aviation. That is 1 out of every 5. Not because 210 pilots are worse than other retractable pilots, because the mechanical system is more failure-prone than any retractable gear design flying today. In September 2025, the NTSB investigated 5 separate accidents involving fatigue cracks in the hydraulic landing gear actuator housings. Pitting corrosion in the aluminum alloy caused every one of them. The NTSB recommended Textron Aviation develop inspection criteria, overhaul intervals, and life limits for those actuators, followed by an FAA airworthiness directive. Early 210s, 1960 through 1969, carry flat spring steel gear legs held in saddles that crack under cyclic stress. The FAA requires annual dye-penetrant inspection of those saddles. Replacement saddles, when you can find them, run thousands. Fuel bladder replacement runs $8,000 to $12,000 per tank. Budget, $5,000 to $10,000 a year in unexpected maintenance above routine items. The 210 does not punish you with one big bill. It punishes you with a new one every annual. Number 5. The Beechcraft Bonanza V-Tail. The most iconic single-engine airplane ever built. Over 10,000 V-Tails delivered since 1947. Gorgeous lines. A devoted community in the American Bonanza Society. Performance that still embarrasses newer designs. The NTSB accident records between 1962 and 2007 document an average of 3 V-tail in-flight structural failures per year. The conventional tail Bonanza models 33 and 36 suffered 11 total structural failures across the same 45 years. 136 versus 11. That is not a nickname. That is a structural record. The FAA ran wind tunnel and flight tests in the late 1980s and proved the V-tail did not meet type certification standards under certain conditions. Beechcraft issued an AI airworthiness directive requiring a stabilizer reinforcement kit. The cuffs reduced failures. They did not erase them. In November 2025, Textron Aviation announced it will stop building the Bonanza and Baron once the final order backlog clears. No new V-tails have rolled off the line since 1982. Now the straight tail is joining them. Textron says it will continue parts and support. Every orphaned manufacturer says that. Mooney said it too. The airplane that outlived every competitor is walking toward the same vanishing support network as the Comanche. Beautiful airplane. The record follows it. Which airplane on this list surprised you the most? Was it the Yankees' spin record, the 210's gear rate, or the V-tail's structural numbers? That is the kind of data the brochure never prints. Number 4. The Piper Cherokee, Warrior, Archer, and Arrow, the entire PA-28 family. The most popular trainer and first airplane in general aviation. Stable, forgiving, affordable. The airplane every flight school uses and every CFI recommends. In 2018, a Piper Arrow's wings separated in flight during a commercial pilot check ride. The pilot applicant and the designated pilot examiner both went down. The NTSB traced the failure to a fatigue crack in the main wing. Spar lower cap bolt hole. The FAA issued Airworthiness Directive 2020-26-16. Piper and the FAA received over 2,800 eddy current inspection reports from the fleet. More than 100 came back with positive indications. Piper studied 24 spars in detail. 3 had confirmed fatigue cracks. The root cause is the cold bend process used to create the spar dihedral. Residual stress builds in the bolt holes over time. In September 2024, 2 new proposed airworthiness directives expanded the scope to every PA-28 and PA-32 single-engine Piper ever built. Over 21,000 aircraft. That is not a niche airworthiness directive. That is the largest structural rulemaking in single-engine aviation history. Life limits are now 12,000 hours for an unmodified spar or up to 25,000 hours with Piper's new reinforcement kit. The FAA estimates the spar modification at $20,150 per spar. Replacement runs $14,383 per spar with limited availability and long lead times. 2 spars per airplane. Total compliance on a Cherokee worth $65,000, $40,300. The compliance cost is 62% of the airplane's value. The airplane your instructor told you was the safest thing in the sky has a $40,000 clock in each wing. The clock was always running. The FAA took 50 years to put numbers on it. Number 3. The Cirrus SR22, the best-selling piston single in the world since 2003. Over 8,000 delivered. The CAPS parachute system has saved more than 250 lives across 120 confirmed deployments. The SR22 is the safest single-engine airplane flying today by almost every measure. It is also the most expensive piston single to own in 2026 by every measure. A new SR22 G6 starts at $679,900. The turbocharged SR22T starts at $779,900. Used G1 and G2 models begin around $200,000. Insurance runs 1 to 3% of hull value per year. A $600,000 SR22 at 1.5% costs $9,000 annually just to insure. A low-time pilot in a $1.2 million SR22T pays $20,000 to $29,000 a year in premiums before the engine starts. The CAPS repack is mandatory every 10 years. The aircraft is non-airworthy past the expiration date. A G3 or later runs $15,000 to $22,000. Earlier G1 and G2 models push $24,000 to $35,000 because the repack requires composite fuselage work. CAPS repack costs have increased approximately 100% over the past decade. A 6-year line cutter replacement sits on top of that. Composite airframe repair is more specialized and more expensive than aluminum. A fender bender that a Cherokee shrugs off with a sheet metal patch sends a Cirrus to a certified composite shop for weeks. The parachute saves your life. Then it sends you a bill every 10 years for the rest of your ownership. Nobody mentions that on the showroom floor. Number 2. The Cessna 150 and 152, and every low-compression piston airplane in the fleet. The airplane that taught more pilots to fly than any other. Simple, cheap, nearly indestructible. You can find one for $25,000 and it will start every morning. Innospec, the only company on Earth that manufactures TEL, the lead additive in 100 LL avgas, will stop production by 2028 or 2029. The manufacturing process is so corrosive it destroys the equipment used to make it. When Innospec stops, the lead stops. The FAA's Eagle initiative targets nationwide elimination of leaded avgas by the end of 2030. The 2024 FAA Reauthorization Act backs it. California bans leaded avgas on January 1, 2031. 3 candidate unleaded fuels are in development. None has full fleet-wide authorization. Lead is not just an octane booster, it lubricates the exhaust valve seats. Remove it from engines designed 70 years ago and the valve seats wear prematurely. Mechanics estimate hardened valve seat replacement and cylinder work on a Cessna 182 at $20,000 to $30,000. The 150 uses similar valve technology. The fuel transition will split the resale market. Aircraft approved for the new unleaded fuels hold value. The rest depreciate. Every 150 and 152 owner is flying an airplane whose fuel supply has an expiration date. The replacement fuel is not ready. The deadline does not care. Number 1. The Cessna 172 Skyhawk, the most produced airplane in history. The airplane every student learns in. The airplane every forum recommends. The airplane every lender finances. The Cessna 172 is not the worst airplane on this list. It is the biggest gap between the reputation and the 2026 ownership reality. A new 172 Skyhawk starts at $359,000. A well-equipped used example averages $180,000 to $220,000. Engine overhaul runs $20,000 to $40,000. A full replacement exceeds $50,000. Annual inspections land between $1,500 and $5,500 depending on findings. Total annual cost at 100 hours, $13,500 to $15,500. On July 24, 2026, MOSAIC Phase 2 takes effect. The old light sport. Aircraft weight limit disappears. Performance-based metrics replace it. New factory-built aircraft with glass panels, ballistic parachutes, FADEC engines burning MOGAS or Jet A, and full factory warranties enter the market at prices that compete with a used 172. The Sling TSI, the Bristol B-23, the Tecnam P-2010. Modern engineering with modern fuel compatibility. No certification tax. The 172 buyer in 2026 is paying a certified aircraft premium for 1950s engine technology. That engine will face the unleaded fuel transition, and the airframe's value proposition is about to meet its first real competition in 70 years. The airplane is still fantastic. The assumption that it is the only rational choice is the part that is no longer true. Every airplane on this list carries the same lesson. Popular does not mean trouble-free. Trusted does not mean disclosed. The reputation and the logbook are not the same document. The seller reads one, the mechanic reads the other. Would you still buy the airplane in your hangar if you saw this list first? Or would the number next to your model change your mind? Subscribe to Sky Ranch. The logbook does not lie. The brochure does.